After the SAT results came out, Ethan Blake, the poorest student in our class, had scored just over 660. And yet, he somehow managed to convince my two childhood friends to apply with him to the worst community college in the state. Under his influence, they both happily agreed to go to the same school as him. I tried to talk some sense into them over and over, but they accused me of having bad intentions, of just being jealous of Ethan. When that didn't work, I reached out to their parents. At the very last minute before the application deadline, I managed to get their choices changed, securing them spots at a good university. Ethan had no choice but to enroll in the community college alone. Less than 6 months later, news broke that he had jumped from a campus building. After Jessica Miller and Megan Flores went to the school to claim his body, they came back and dragged me up to the rooftop. If you hadn't stopped us from applying to the same school as Ethan, they said, he never would have been bullied into jumping to his death. Now you can die with him. Without hesitating, they pushed me off the roof. I hit the ground and shattered into pieces. When I opened my eyes again, I was back at the exact moment they decided to follow Ethan to that community college. This time, I'll just stand back and watch them throw their lives away. Ethan is right. Better to be a big fish in a small pond than a small fish in the big sea. I've decided to apply to a community college with him. With our abilities, even at a community college, we'll still be the standout figures. Seeing Jessica and Megan agree to go with him, Ethan's face lit up with joy. Then he turned his gaze toward me. Ryan, you should come with us too. The four of us have always been a team. I really don't want to be separated from you all. Looking at the three familiar faces before me, it hit me all at once. I had been reborn. I had returned to the moment right after the SAT scores were released. Jessica, Megan, and I had all scored above 1,400, more than enough to get into top universities in the country. But Ethan, the poor student who had only scored a little over 660, had somehow managed to persuade us to follow him to a community college instead. This time, if they wanted to go, they could go. I wouldn't waste a single word trying to stop them again. I stood up immediately. Choosing a college is a major decision. I'm going home to discuss it with my parents before I fill out my application. Ethan's expression instantly turned pitiful. Ryan, do you not want to stay with us anymore? I had already seen through his manipulative act in my previous life. I had no intention of getting tangled up with him any further. In this life, I just wanted to stay far away from these three unhinged people and live in peace. I turned to leave and started packing my things, but Jessica and Megan blocked my way. Ryan Jenkins, what's that supposed to mean? Ethan made a kind suggestion. Are you going or not? Give us a straight answer. We don't have time to wait for you. You're already 18. Can't you make up your own mind? Where you go to college, don't you even know that yourself? Looking at them, the vicious expressions from my previous life suddenly flashed in my mind, the moment they had shoved me off a 36-story building. A chill ran down my spine. If that's how it is, then I'll be blunt. My first choice will definitely be Harvard or Stanford University. As for that no-name community college, you can go ahead and attend it yourselves. The moment my words fell, tears immediately welled up in Ethan's eyes. Ryan, what do you mean? Are you looking down on me for only being able to get into a community college? Megan hurriedly pulled out tissues and wiped his tears. Don't cry, Ethan. Even if you go to a community college, we're willing to go with you. So, what if some people get into a top university? In the end, they'll just end up working like everyone else. I don't know where all that arrogance comes from. Jessica turned on me sharply. Ryan, I think you're just jealous of Ethan, so you're deliberately putting him down. Apologize to him right now. Otherwise, don't expect us to ever talk to you again. Their blatant defense of Ethan chilled me to the bone. I had grown up with them. For as long as I could remember, Jessica and Megan had been like family to me. They once swore they would treat me well for a lifetime, that no matter who I chose in the future, the other would sincerely support me. But everything changed in our second year of high school when Ethan transferred to our school. He told me he was a poor student my family had been sponsoring all along and even brought me sweet potatoes from his village as a token of gratitude. He seemed honest and sincere, so I introduced him to Jessica and Megan. I never expected that from that moment on, everything would change. They shifted all their attention and care to Ethan, repeatedly using our bond as leverage to pressure me into yielding to him. Back then, I was foolish. I still held on to hope in them, and that was how I ended up losing my life. Now, I only wanted to stay as far away from them as possible. Then from now on, let's stop contacting each other. You can go to your community college, I'll go to the university of my choice. Let's pretend we never knew each other. Jessica and Megan clearly hadn't expected such an answer. Both of them stiffened. Without looking at them again, I picked up my laptop bag and turned to leave. But suddenly, Ethan snatched it from my hands. Ryan, I know you've always liked Jessica and Megan. You're just saying this out of anger. Just so you won't regret it later, I'll fill out your application for you. He opened my laptop and logged into my account, preparing to submit my choices himself. Panic flared in me immediately. I rushed forward to grab it back, but he quickly hid behind Jessica and Megan, using them to block me. Alone, I couldn't get past them. I could only watch helplessly as he filled in a community college as my choice. Once the application was submitted, he handed the laptop back to me, his eyes brimming with smug satisfaction. You only get 3 chances to modify your application. I've already used them all. Now, you have no choice but to go to community college with us. Rage surged through me. I raised my hand and slapped him. How dare you make decisions for me without my permission? Jessica seized my wrist and shoved me hard to the ground, snapping. Ethan was doing this for your own good. I can't believe you not only refuse to be grateful, but actually repay kindness with ingratitude. Megan looked down at me from above. It's done now. The application is finalized. Just accept it and attend community college with us. Ethan has already agreed that after school starts, he'll choose one of us to be his girlfriend. The one he doesn't choose can reluctantly be your girlfriend instead. I stared at them coldly. Do you think I'm a trash bin? Picking up whatever he throws away. Jessica and Megan glared at me in fury. Ethan quickly stepped in to calm them. Jessica, Megan, don't be angry. Ryan will eventually understand that we're doing this for his good. The movie is about to start. Let's go. The 3 of them turned and walked toward the cinema upstairs together. I looked at the submitted application on my laptop, a hollow coldness filling my chest. Had I really been reborn just to end up entangled with these 3 again? Clutching the laptop, I went home to find my parents. The moment they saw me, all the grievance I had been holding back surged up. Tears fell uncontrollably from my eyes. My mother reached out and gently wiped them away. Ryan, what happened? My voice broke as I told them everything that had just occurred. My father slammed his hand on the table, his face dark with anger. Outrageous. That ungrateful bastard. After everything our family did to support his education, this is how he repays us. My mother was equally anxious. Now that Ryan's application has been submitted, what do we do? Without hesitation, my father picked up his phone and called the teacher, asking whether a wrongly submitted application could still be revoked. The teacher explained that as long as the application period had not ended, students could modify their choices an unlimited number of times. The so-called only 3 changes allowed rule was nothing more than a scare tactic to make students take the application process more seriously. My choices were restored. But I knew very well that things between me and Ethan, and those 2 girls, were far from over. Since neither in this life, nor the last had they been willing to let me go, I would no longer sit back and wait for fate to crush me. After planning everything carefully, I finally felt the heavy weight in my chest lift. Believing that my admission to a community college was already set in stone, Ethan went traveling with Jessica and Megan. Every day, he sent me photos of the 3 of them being intimate. Ryan, how does it feel to watch the 2 women you like fawning all over me? Not good, right? Jessica and Megan both said they'd rather be my second choice than pick you. As a man, don't you think that's pretty pathetic? Faced with his constant provocation, I felt nothing at all. I simply knew his good days were numbered. When the acceptance letter from Heartwarming University arrived, the Homeowners Association posted an announcement in the community group chat. One student in our community has been admitted to Heartwarming University. The local community foundation will award a $10,000 scholarship as an encouragement. Residents who are available tomorrow are invited to attend the award ceremony. This was a long-standing tradition in our community. For top universities like Harvard and Stanford, acceptance letters would first be held by the foundation, and an award ceremony would be held before they were officially handed over. The group chat immediately exploded with congratulatory messages. Then Jessica's mother sent a voice message. Thank you all for your blessings. Jessica will continue to work hard once she gets to Harvard. Immediately, the residents began praising her and asking for parenting advice. At that moment, Megan's mother also sent a voice message. The one who got into Harvard is obviously Megan. Mrs. Miller, how shameless can you be to claim it as your daughter's? Mrs. Miller fired back instantly. You're the shameless one. My Jessica scored a 1490. She already told me she was admitted to Harvard. Mrs. Flores replied, furious. My Megan scored a 1510. If anyone got in, it's her. Don't you know that in top-tier admissions, even 10 points can make a world of difference? 20 points is a huge gap. The 2 of them argued viciously in the group chat, each insisting their daughter had been admitted to Harvard. Watching the flood of messages, I sneered inwardly. If they knew their precious daughters had abandoned top universities just to chase some poor guy to the worst community college, I wondered if they would pass out from rage. In the end, the foundation stepped in to mediate and confirmed that only one student in our entire community had been admitted to Horvath. As for who it was, that would be revealed at the awards ceremony the next day. Because of the chaos in the group chat the night before, the awards ceremony drew an unusually large crowd. Everyone wanted to see which family had produced the Horvath admit. Before the ceremony began, the three of them, Ethan, Jessica, and Megan, approached me. Ethan looked at me and said, "Ryan, you should have reflected on yourself by now. As long as you sincerely apologize and promise that my tuition and living expenses at the community college will still be covered by your family, the four of us can go back to how things were before, best friends." But community college is expensive. It's not like before when it was $200 a month. Now it needs at least $1,000 a month. I nearly laughed out of sheer anger at his shamelessness. "Ethan, let me make this clear. My family will not sponsor you a single cent from this moment on." His eyes turned red as he looked toward Jessica and Megan for support. They immediately turned on me. "Ryan, don't be ungrateful. Ethan is still willing to accept your family's support. That's already doing you a favor. If you don't agree today, don't expect us to look out for you at the community college." A cold smile curved my lips as I looked at them. "You should be worrying about yourselves instead." On stage, the foundation representative held up the Horvath acceptance letter and announced loudly, "Please welcome Ryan Jenkins from Unit 502 to the stage to receive your Horvath University acceptance letter and a cash scholarship of $10,000. Under the gaze of everyone present, I walked onto the stage and received what was rightfully mine, the Horvath acceptance letter. At that moment, Mrs. Miller and Mrs. Flores rushed onto the stage, shouting in disbelief. "This is impossible. There must be a mistake. That acceptance letter belongs to my daughter, Megan. The one admitted to Horvath should be my Jessica." Just then, a delivery driver in a green uniform stepped forward and called out, "Jessica Miller and Megan Flores, your acceptance letters have arrived." The crowd turned toward the delivery driver like a flock of pigeons. Spotting breadcrumbs, Mrs. Miller and Mrs. Lewis froze. Mid-argument, their faces twitching between fury and confusion. Jessica and Megan, who had been standing beside Ethan, with their arms crossed in smug solidarity, suddenly went pale. A delivery driver, Mrs. Miller, squinted at an award ceremony. Mrs. Flores grabbed Megan's arm.
"Did you order something?"
Megan shook her head, her eyes darting toward Jessica. Neither of them had any idea what was happening. The driver, a young man in a green polo shirt with a courier company logo, held up two large envelopes. "I'm looking for Jessica Miller and Megan Flores. I have acceptance letters for both of you," the crowd murmured. Acceptance letters. But the only acceptance letter being awarded today was for Harvard. That had already gone to Ryan, so what were these Mrs. Miller's face lit up. "Oh, maybe Jessica got into another top university. A backup or an early admission." Mrs. Flores immediately bristled. "More likely Megan got a better offer, maybe a full scholarship." The two women began pushing toward the driver, their hands outstretched. But before they could reach him, Ethan stepped forward. His expression was strange, not excited, not proud. Worried. He had seen the return address on the envelopes. He knew exactly what they were. "Wait," he said, his voice too loud. "Maybe we should open these in private. This is a public ceremony." "Nonsense." Mrs. Miller snatched one envelope from the driver's hand. "If it's good news, the whole neighborhood should celebrate." She tore open the envelope and pulled out the letter. Inside, her eyes scanned the page. The color drained from her face. "Well, Mrs. Flores demanded, grabbing the other envelope. "What does it say?" Mrs. Miller didn't answer. She just stood there, frozen, the letter trembling in her hands. Mrs. Dolores opened her own letter. Her reaction was the same. Her mouth fell open. Her knees seemed to buckle. The driver, oblivious to the tension, smiled and said, "Congratulations. You've both been accepted to Westbrook Community College. They're lucky to have you." Community college. The scream came from both mothers simultaneously. Mrs. Miller crumpled the letter in her fist. "Jessica, what is the meaning of this? You told me you applied to Harvard. You told me you were going to be a top-tier graduate." Jessica's face had gone white. "Mom, I can explain. You got into a community college." Mrs. Flores shrieked, turning on Megan. "After all the money we spent on tutors, on prep courses, on your extracurriculars, you're going to a community college." Megan backed away, her hands raised. "Mom, it's not what you think." "Then what is it?" Mrs. Flores waved the letter like a weapon. "It says right here, Westbrook Community College. The worst school in the state, the one with a graduation rate of 15%. The crowd erupted in whispers. Neighbors who had been congratulating the family's moments ago now exchanged knowing glances. Their lips curled in barely concealed amusement. Community had a long memory. No one would forget this. Ethan stepped between the mothers and their daughters, his voice shaking. Mrs. Miller, Mrs. Flores, please calm down. Community college isn't a bad thing. It's affordable and you can transfer after 2 years. Stay out of this, Mrs. Miller snapped. You're the reason my daughter is throwing her life away. Aren't you? I've heard the rumors. You've been filling her head with lies about being a big fish in a small pond. Ethan's face crumpled. I was just trying to help Mrs. Flores laughed bitterly. You helped yourself to their attention, their time, their futures. And now you want to drag them down to your level. Jessica grabbed her mother's arm. Mom, stop. Ethan didn't force us to do anything. We chose this. We wanted to go with him. You wanted to throw away a 1490 SAT score for a community college. Mrs. Miller's voice cracked. Have you lost your mind? Megan nodded vigorously. We know what we're doing. Top schools are overrated. What matters is who you know, not where you go, who you know. Mrs. Flores pointed at Ethan, him, a poor student whose entire education was funded by charity. What connections does he have? What future can he offer you? Ethan flinched as if he'd been slapped. His eyes glistened with tears. I may not be rich, but I'm hardworking. I'll make something of myself. I just need a chance. A chance, Mrs. Miller scoffed. You've had every chance the Jenkins family gave you, and how do you repay them? By sabotaging their son's college applications, by turning his childhood friends against him. The crowd's whispers grew louder. More than a few heads turned toward me. I stood at the edge of the stage, my acceptance letter still in hand, watching the drama unfold with a calm that surprised even me. In my past life, this moment would have filled me with vindictive satisfaction. Now I just felt empty. Mrs. Miller grabbed Jessica by the wrist. We're going home right now. You're going to call the admissions office and beg them to reconsider your Harvard application. It's too late, Mom. The deadline passed. And you'll take a gap year. You'll reapply. Anything is better than community college. Mrs. Flores was already dragging Megan toward the exit. You're not going anywhere near that boy ever again. Do you hear me? Ever. Jessica and Megan shot desperate looks at Ethan. But he couldn't help them. He stood alone, his shoulders slumped, his eyes fixed on the ground. The crowd parted around him like he was contagious. I walked down from the stage and approached him. He looked up, his eyes red. Are you happy now, Ryan? Happy? I shook my head. No, I'm not happy. I'm just not sad. You could have stopped them. You could have told your parents to keep sponsoring me. You could have come with us. Could have. Should have. Would have. I tucked my acceptance letter into my bag, but I didn't. Because I learned something, Ethan. You can't save people who don't want to be saved. His jaw tightened. You think you're better than me because you got into Harvard. I think I'm different from you. That's all. I turned and walked away. Behind me, I heard his voice, low and bitter. This isn't over, Ryan. You'll regret this. I didn't look back. The weeks that followed were chaotic. Jessica and Megan's parents kept them under house arrest, confiscating their phones and blocking their internet access. The two girls managed to sneak out a few times to meet Ethan, but each time they were caught and punished more severely. The community college acceptance letters were rescinded by force. Mrs. Miller and Mrs. Flores hired lawyers to pressure Westbrook into canceling their daughter's admissions. It worked. The community college, eager to avoid a scandal, agreed to void the applications, but the damage was done. The top universities had already filled their spots. Jessica and Megan were left with no options. Parents, desperate to salvage something, enrolled them in expensive private prep schools for a gap year, hoping they could reapply next fall. Ethan, meanwhile, had no such backup plan. He had burned his bridges with my family, and without our sponsorship, he couldn't afford even the community college tuition. He took out loans, applied for scholarships, and worked odd jobs, but it wasn't enough. In October, 3 months after the award ceremony, I received a message from an old classmate. Did you hear about Ethan? He's been struggling at Westbrook. The other students found out he only got a 660 on the SAT. And they've been brutal. They say he's been skipping classes, losing weight. Someone saw him on the roof of the library last week. My blood went cold. On the roof? Yeah, the security guards talked him down, but people are saying it's only a matter of time. I stared at the message. In my past life, the same thing had happened. Ethan had jumped. Jessica and Megan had blamed me, pushed me off a roof. But this time I had done nothing. I had stayed out of their way. I had let them make their own choices. So why did I still feel like I was falling? The news broke on a Tuesday. Westbrook Community College. Ethan Blake died early this morning after falling from the campus library roof. Authorities are investigating, but sources indicate it may have been a suicide. I read the headline on my phone sitting in the library at Harvard. The words blurred in front of my eyes. Ethan was dead just like before. But this time I hadn't been involved. I hadn't tried to stop him, I hadn't argued with Jessica and Megan. I had simply let go. So why did my hands feel cold? Why did my chest feel hollow? My phone buzzed. A group message from Jessica and Megan. The first I'd heard from them in months. Jessica, we need to talk now. Megan, don't ignore us, Ryan. You know what this is about? I didn't reply. Jessica, Ethan is dead, and it's your fault, Megan. If you hadn't abandoned him, if you had stood by him like we did, he would still be alive. Jessica, you think getting into Harvard makes you better than us? You're nothing. You're a coward, Megan. We're coming to see you. Don't try to hide. I put down my phone and looked out the window. On the street below, a black car pulled up to the curb. Two figures got out. Jessica and Megan, they looked different than I remembered. Thinner, paler, their eyes sunken and hollow. They scanned the building, then looked up straight at me. They found me. I should have been scared. I should have called security, run hidden, but I didn't, because I had already died once at their hands. And in this life, I wasn't going to run. I stood up, gathered my things, and walked toward the elevator. The doors opened. I stepped inside. And as the numbers counted down, I thought about what I would say to them. You pushed me off a roof. Once are you here to finish the job? The elevator doors slid open with a soft ping, the sound loud in the quiet of the dorm lobby. I stepped out, my sneakers squeaking slightly against the polished linoleum. The security desk was to my right. Stan, the guard on duty, gave me a familiar nod. I walked over to him, leaning casually against the high counter. Hey, Stan. Expecting some visitors. Two girls. They might be a little agitated. Could you keep an eye out? If they start screaming, don't hesitate to call campus police. Stan frowned, his hand dropping closer to the radio on his belt. Girl trouble, Ryan? Something like that, I muttered. Just don't let them drag me anywhere. I walked toward the glass double doors of the lobby and pushed through into the crisp October air. The courtyard was moderately busy, students rushing to classes, clutching coffees. I positioned myself near a heavy stone bench, in full view of several security cameras and dozens of witnesses. I wasn't going to follow them to any rooftops this time. I didn't have to wait long. They marched across the quad, moving with a stiff, synchronized manic energy. Jessica's hair, usually perfectly straightened, was tied in a messy, greasy knot. Megan wore an oversized hoodie that swallowed her frame, her eyes darting nervously around the courtyard before locking onto me. Ryan, Jessica hissed as she closed the distance. She didn't shout, but her voice carried a venomous edge. We told you not to hide. I'm standing in the middle of the courtyard, I said, my voice deadpan. Not exactly hiding, Jessica. Megan stepped up beside her, trembling. How can you be so calm? Ethan is dead. He's dead, Ryan. And you're just here, going to classes, living your perfect little life. What did you expect me to do? I asked, keeping my hands visible and my posture relaxed. Inside, my heart was hammering against my ribs, but I refused to let them see it. Drop out? Hold a vigil? I hadn't spoken to Ethan since the summer. Because you abandoned him. Jessica lunged forward, grabbing the fabric of my jacket. Before I could react, a voice barked from the entrance. Hey, step back. Now. Stan was standing at the doors, his hand resting on his radio. Several students had stopped walking and were staring at us. Jessica released my jacket as if it had burned her, taking a half step back. But her eyes never left mine. You think you're safe here? You think these people care about you? They don't know what you did. They don't know you killed him. I didn't push him off that roof, I said quietly, making sure my phone tucked in my breast pocket with the voice memo app running, caught every word. And I didn't force him to go to Westbrook. You both know exactly who pushed him to his breaking point. The students there found out what a fraud he was. Megan let out a choked sob. Shut up. You don't know anything. He was sensitive. He needed us. He needed my family's money, I corrected coldly. Once that was gone, he didn't have a safety net to fund his ego. What happened to him is tragic, but it isn't my fault. And it sure as hell isn't my problem. You arrogant piece of shit, Jessica snarled. She leaned in, her voice dropping to a whisper meant only for me. You're going to pay for this. We're going to make sure you feel exactly what he felt before he hit the ground. A cold shiver raced down my spine, a ghost of the wind from a 36-story drop. But this time, my feet were planted firmly on solid ground. Are you threatening me, Jessica? I asked aloud, clear and distinct. We're just promising justice, Megan whispered, her eyes wide and glassy. Stan, I called out, not taking my eyes off them. Can we get campus PD over here? These two aren't students, and they're making threats. Jessica's face contorted in sheer panic. You're calling the cops? You coward. I'm setting boundaries, I said. Something neither of you ever learned to do. With Ethan. Now get off my campus before you leave in handcuffs. They hesitated. The madness in their eyes warred with the reality of the situation. The approaching wail of a police siren, likely campus security in a golf cart, but loud enough to break their delusion, made the decision for them. This isn't over, Ryan, Jessica spat. She grabbed Megan's wrist and the two of them turned, practically sprinting toward the edge of the campus. I reached into my pocket, stopped the recording, and saved the file. The restraining order was approved 3 days later. The recording I'd made, combined with Stan's testimony and the manic text messages they had sent me, made it a swift process. A judge legally barred Jessica Miller and Megan Flores from coming within 500 feet of me, my dorm, or the Harvard campus. But I knew a piece of paper wouldn't stop them. In my past life, they had murdered me in broad daylight without a second thought for the consequences. Grief and misplaced guilt had mutated them into something unrecognizable. I couldn't just play defense. I needed to dismantle the ghost that was haunting them. I needed to destroy Ethan Blake all over again, but this time in their minds. I hired a private investigator using a portion of the scholarship money my family had saved. His name was Vance, an ex-cop with a cynical streak and a knack for digging up dirt that people tried to bury. I gave him Ethan's background, his time at Westbrook, and his sudden demise. I want to know why he really jumped, I told Vance over a secure line. The official story is bullying. I want the details. I want to know what he was doing before he died, who he was talking to. It took Vance 2 weeks. When he finally emailed me the encrypted file, I sat in the dim light of my dorm room, locking the door before I opened it. The report was extensive. Westbrook Community College had tried to sweep the circumstances of the suicide under the rug to avoid liability, but students talked. Ethan hadn't just been bullied for his low SAT scores. That was only the catalyst. He had been running a scam. Ethan had realized early on that without my family's money, he couldn't maintain the facade he liked to project. He had started a study group for struggling freshmen, charging them exorbitant fees under the table and promising them access to stolen exam papers. The papers were fake. When the freshmen failed their midterms, they demanded their money back. Ethan refused. The group cornered him. But that wasn't the most damning part of the file. Vance had managed to get his hands on the contents of Ethan's laptop, which the police had briefly confiscated and then returned to his estranged aunt. Vance bought the hard drive off her for $300. I scrolled through the screenshots Vance had pulled. There were dozens of saved chat logs, diary entries, and drafts of emails. My eyes landed on a document titled Escape Docs. It was written 3 days before his death. My stomach churned as I read Ethan's words. I can't stand it anymore. Those two crazy bitches won't stop texting me. Jess and Meg. They ruined everything. If they hadn't caused that massive scene at the community awards ceremony, my old sponsor wouldn't have completely cut me off. They cling to me like parasites. They think I actually care about them. I just wanted their rich parents' connections, but now they're outcasts too. They're useless. I'm drowning in debt. These Westbrook losers are threatening to beat me up, and all those two girls do is whine about their gap year and tell me they love me. I wish I had never met them. I wish I could just disappear. He didn't jump because he was bullied. He jumped because his entire web of lies collapsed, and the two people who loved him the most had become his greatest suffocating burden. He hated them. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling a breath I didn't realize I was holding. This was it. This was the weapon I needed. Not to kill them, but to shatter the delusion that fueled their murderous rage toward me. I printed the document, made copies, and locked the original flash drive in a small fireproof safe under my bed. The next move was mine. Thanksgiving break was approaching. The campus was emptying out as students headed home to their families. My parents had asked me to fly back, but I made an excuse about a massive term paper. Going home meant returning to the neighborhood. Returning to the neighborhood meant being in their territory. I felt safer in Boston, where I controlled the environment. Or so I thought. It was a Tuesday evening. A cold rain lashed against the windows of the library. I packed up my laptop and began the short walk back to my dorm. The paths were relatively deserted, the amber glow of the street lamps reflecting off the wet pavement. As I turned the corner past the science building, a figure stepped out from the shadows of an archway. Megan. She looked worse than before. She was shivering, soaked by the rain, her eyes sunken into dark, bruised hollows. She had one hand buried deep in the pocket of her oversized coat. My adrenaline spiked. I stopped, keeping a distance of at least 20 feet. Megan, you're violating the restraining order. I'm calling the police right
Now.
I pulled out my phone, my thumb hovering over the emergency dial. Don't, she croaked. Her voice was raw, like she had been screaming for hours. Just don't. Jessica isn't here. It's just me. I don't care, I said firmly. Back away. She's planning something, Ryan, Megan blurted out, taking a step forward.
I
Instantly took a step back. Jessica. She's completely lost it. She bought a gun. The world seemed to stop spinning for a fraction of a second. What? She bought a gun, Megan repeated, tears mixing with the rain on her pale cheeks. Off some guy her cousin knows. She says the only way to make things right for Ethan is to do to you what you did to him. She wants to corner you, make you jump. And if you won't jump, she's going to shoot you. I stared at her, scanning her face for the trap. In my past life, they had worked together flawlessly to drag me up to that roof.
Was this a ploy to get me?
To lower my guard? Why are you telling me this? I asked, keeping my voice steady. You blame me, just as much as she does. Megan let out a broken, hysterical laugh. I did. I really did. But Ryan,
I'm
so tired. My parents hate me. I have no future. Ethan is dead. And Jessica. Jessica is scaring me. She sits in her room talking to him like he's still
there.
She told me yesterday that Ethan visited her in a dream and demanded
Blood. I don't want to go to prison, Ryan.
I don't want to be a murderer. She pulled her hand out of her pocket. It was empty. She held both hands up in surrender. I came to warn you. You need to leave. Go back home. She thinks you're staying here for Thanksgiving. I processed the information rapidly. If Jessica had a gun, running away wouldn't solve the problem. She would just wait, hunt me down. I had to end this, permanently and legally. Megan, I said slowly. Do you want to stop her? She hesitated, then nodded frantically. Then I need your help. You need to bring her to me, but on my terms. Her eyes widened. Are you insane? I just told you she wants to kill you. And if I run, I spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder. I countered. I have something you both need to see. Something about Ethan.
If
Jessica sees it, it might break her out of this. And if it doesn't, I'll have the police waiting. What do you have? The truth, I said. Meet me tomorrow night. The old abandoned observatory on the edge of campus. It's closed for renovations. Tell Jessica you tracked my routine and found out I study there alone because it's quiet. Bring her there. At 9 p.m. Megan shook her head wildly. No, that's a trap, I can't. Megan, I snapped, dropping the calm facade. You pushed me away for him. You ruined your own life for him. And now your best friend is about to commit first-degree murder for a guy who couldn't stand the sight of you. This stops. Tomorrow, 9 p.m. Or I call the police right now and tell them you're stalking
me.
She stared at me, terrified. Finally, she gave a jerky nod. Okay, I'll bring her. She turned and ran into the rain. I stood there for a moment, my heart hammering. I had just invited a loaded gun to a meeting, but I knew the terrain, and I knew exactly how to set the snare. The next morning, I went straight to the campus police and then to the local Boston PD precinct. I didn't hold anything back. I told them about the restraining order, Megan's visit, and the threat of an illegal firearm. Detective Russo, a weary-looking man with a graying mustache, listened to the recording I had made of Megan's confession. You're a stupid kid, you know that? Russo sighed, rubbing his temples. Setting up a meeting with an armed, unstable suspect? You should have called 911 the second she mentioned a gun. If I just called it in, it would be my word against hers, I argued. Jessica would hide the gun, play the victim, and say I was harassing them. They're good at playing the victim. I need them caught red-handed. I'm giving you the time and the place. All you have to do is be there. Russo glared at me. We'll be there, but you are not going inside that observatory, Jenkins. We'll set a perimeter, wait for them to show, and apprehend them for violating the restraining order and suspected possession of a firearm. Understood. I lied. I had no intention of staying outside. I needed Jessica to pull that gun.
I.
Needed her intent to murder caught on tape, undeniable and absolute. Only a long prison sentence would keep me safe. By 8 p.m., the storm from the previous night had cleared, leaving a freezing, biting wind in its wake. The old observatory was a domed brick building sitting on a small hill on the outskirts of the university grounds.
It was surrounded by
Scaffolding and wrapped in thick plastic tarps. I arrived early. I knew Russo's men were taking positions in the dark, blending into the tree line. I slipped through a gap in the chain-link fence that the construction crews used and picked the cheap padlock on the side door, a trick Ethan had actually taught me back in high school when he used to break into the cafeteria for extra food. The interior was dark, smelling of dust, old wood, and wet concrete. The main telescope had been removed, leaving a gaping circular platform in the center of the room, directly under the dome. A spiral iron staircase wrapped around the perimeter, leading up to the observation deck. I climbed halfway up the stairs, finding a shadowed alcove where I could see the entrance perfectly. I placed a Bluetooth speaker on a nearby crate, synced to my phone, and set my phone to record video, propping it securely between two pipes. Then, I pulled out the printed copies of Ethan's diary entries and scattered them across the center of the floor below, right where the moonlight cut through the open slit in the dome. At 8:50 p.m., I heard the crunch of gravel outside. My breath hitched. The side door creaked open. 2 flashlight beams cut through the darkness. "He's not here, Megan." Jessica's voice echoed in the empty space. It sounded strained, completely devoid of the preppy arrogance she used to carry. "He should be," Megan whispered back, her voice shaking. "He always comes here. Just, let's check upstairs." They stepped into the center of the room. Jessica's hand was buried in the pocket of her heavy peacoat. She looked like a ghost, pale, hollowed out, consumed by an obsession that had rotting her from the inside. Her boot stepped on one of the papers I had scattered. She looked down, panning, her flashlight over the floor. "What is this?" she muttered. She crouched down, picking up a page. I watched from the shadows as she read. I watched her eyes scan the words, tracking back to the top, reading them again. The silence in the room stretched until it felt like a physical weight. Megan peered over her shoulder. "Jess, what does it say?" It's a fake," Jessica whispered, her voice trembling. "It's a lie." "Read it aloud, Jessica," I called out. Both girls jumped, their flashlights snapping up to the staircase, blinding me. For a second. "Ryan," Jessica snarled. She dropped the paper and yanked her hand out of her
coat.
The dull gleam of a snub-nosed revolver caught the ambient light.
She
pointed it unsteadily in my direction. "Come down here."
now.
"No," I said calmly. "I'm fine right here." "Did you read the part where he calls you parasites? Or the part where he says he wishes he never met you?" "Shut up," Jessica screamed, the sound tearing her throat. "He loved us. We were the only ones who understood him."
You forged this.
"I got it from the police file, Jessica," I said, my voice echoing off the dome. "Ethan hated you. You suffocated him. You followed him to a place he went, specifically to escape the expectations of your parents, and you just brought those expectations with you. He didn't jump because of bullies.
He jumped
because he owed people money, and he'd rather die than spend another day pretending to care about you too." "Liar," she fired. The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space. The bullet struck the iron railing 2 feet to my left, showering me in sparks and rust. Megan shrieked, dropping her flashlight and clapping her hands over her ears. "Jess, stop. You said we were just going to talk." "He deserves to die," Jessica screamed, aiming again. "He killed Ethan. If he had just let us be together, Ethan wouldn't have needed the money. Ryan's family cut him off. Ryan killed him." "Put the gun down, Jessica." The voice didn't come from me. It came from the doorway. Detective Russo and 3 uniformed officers stepped into the building, their service weapons drawn and tactical flashlights blinding Jessica. "Boston police. Drop the weapon."
Now.
Jessica froze. She looked at the police, then back up at me in the shadows. Her mind, already fractured by grief and the shattering truth of the letters on the floor, finally broke completely. Instead of dropping the gun, she turned it toward the ceiling and let out an agonizing, ear-piercing scream of pure despair. "Ethan!" An officer tackled her from behind before she could level the gun at anyone
Else.
The weapon clattered across the concrete floor. Megan collapsed to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably, not even resisting as an officer gently but firmly cuffed her. I slowly walked down the iron stairs, my legs feeling like lead. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a bone-deep exhaustion. Russo met me at the bottom. He looked furiously at me, then down at the papers. On the floor. He picked one up, read it briefly, and sighed. "You're a reckless idiot, Jenkins," he muttered. "Did you hear her confess to wanting to kill me?" I asked, my voice flat. "We heard enough. She fired a weapon at you. Attempted murder. She's going away. For a long time." Russo gestured to a paramedic who had just arrived at the
door.
"Go get checked out. And stay on my city's crime scenes." I walked past Jessica. She was pinned to the floor, panting heavily, her eyes locked onto one of the papers still scattered near her face. She wasn't fighting the officers anymore. She just stared at Ethan's words, tears streaming down her face, muttering, "No, no, no," over and over again. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel joy. I just felt free. The trial took place the following spring. It was a media circus in our hometown, though Boston handled it with clinical efficiency. The narrative of two wealthy suburban girls throwing away their futures for a con artist ending in a premeditated murder attempt at an Ivy League university was too juicy for the local news to ignore. I took the stand on a Tuesday. I wore a sharp suit. I spoke calmly and clearly. I played the recordings. I presented the timeline. Jessica's defense attorney tried to paint her as a grieving victim driven, temporarily insane, arguing that the gun was just meant to scare me.
But the
prosecution had the text messages, the illegal purchase of the firearm, and Megan's testimony. To save herself from a similar sentence, Megan had taken a plea deal. She turned state's witness against Jessica. Sitting in the courtroom, I watched the two girls who used to be my best
friends.
They were seated at separate tables, not making eye contact. Jessica looked entirely vacant. She had lost too much weight. Her hair was dull, and she stared straight ahead, as if the trial was happening to someone else. Megan wept silently through most of the proceedings, constantly looking back at her parents, who sat in the gallery with faces made of stone. When the jury delivered the verdict, there was no dramatic outburst. Jessica Miller was found guilty of attempted murder in the second degree, possession of an illegal firearm, and stalking. The judge sentenced her to 12 years in a state penitentiary. Megan Flores pleaded guilty to conspiracy and stalking. She received 3 years of probation, mandatory psychiatric counseling, and a permanent felony record. As the bailiffs led Jessica away in handcuffs, she finally turned her head and looked at me. There was no hatred left in her eyes, only a vast, empty wasteland. She had finally realized the truth. Ethan had never loved her, and she had destroyed her own life for a ghost. I held her gaze for a second, then turned my back and walked out of the
courtroom.
5 years later, the autumn wind in Boston was just as crisp as I remembered it. I sat in a high-end coffee shop overlooking the Charles River, reviewing a quarterly report for the financial consulting firm I had co-founded shortly after graduating from Harvard. My phone buzzed on the table. It was my mother. "Hey, Mom." "Ryan, honey. Just checking to see if you're still coming down for Thanksgiving next week. Your father is already prepping the smoker for the turkey." I smiled, taking a sip of my black coffee. "Yeah, Mom. I've got my flight booked for Wednesday night. I'll be there." "Good." She hesitated for a moment. I just wanted to warn you. The Flores family moved back into the neighborhood. They had downsized for a while, but I saw Mrs. Flores at the supermarket yesterday. Megan is with them." My hand paused over my laptop keyboard. The name sounded like it belonged to a
different lifetime.
"Is she?" I asked, my voice entirely neutral. She looked rough, Ryan. "She's working as a cashier at the pharmacy downtown." Mrs. Flores looked so ashamed, she pretended not to see me.
I
"Just didn't want you to be caught off guard if you run into her." "Thanks for the heads up, Mom. But it doesn't matter. They're just strangers to me now." "Okay, sweetheart. See you Wednesday." I hung up the phone and looked out the window. The river flowed steadily, unbothered by the city bustling around it. I thought back to the moment I had woken up after being pushed off that roof. The crushing despair, the terror, the sheer disbelief. I had been given a chance, and I had used it exactly the way I needed to. I hadn't tried to save Ethan. You can't save someone who uses manipulation as oxygen. I hadn't tried to save Jessica or Megan. You can't rescue people who are determined to drown and want to use you as a raft. I had simply stepped out of the way. And gravity had taken care of the rest. My laptop pinged with a calendar reminder. A meeting with a major client in 15 minutes. I closed the report, packed my bag, and walked out into the bright, clear morning. The past was finally dead, and my future was just beginning.